In today's video, I wanted to talk to you about how can you trust God completely. Let's go. I find this interesting question that many people ask today, and that is, how do I trust God? How do I know that God is going to come through for me? How do I know that God is going to show up in my mess? That God is going to show up in my circumstances? That God is going to show up in my situation? And every time I think about this question, it takes me back to the people of Israel when God led them out of Egypt and He led them into the promised land. And it makes me think about the fact that He led them and He guided them and He drove them into the promise He had for them. He never left them, He never forsake them. He was with them through every situation, through every circumstance. And all He required of them is to simply trust Him. He just required of them to forget about everything else, to forget about what they see, to forget about what they feel, and just focus upon what they have. And that is who He is. In life, you might find yourself going through places and times and seasons in life where you don't always know where you're going, but you know who's going with you. And that's where it gets important. My trust in God is not dependent upon my destination. My trust in God is dependent upon the fact that He's with me. I would rather be in the desert with Him than be in the palace without Him. I would rather go through the hardships. I would rather go through the storms and know He's there and know He's with me than face no adversity, but I'm alone without Him. God has this way of putting us in situations and taking us through things because valleys will always be evident. Valleys will always be part of life. And we just need to find a place where we know that God's reality and faithfulness in my life is not measured by my circumstances. It's not measured by my situation and what's going on around me. The thing that people find the most difficult, it's not belief. It's not having the belief that God exists. It's not having the belief that there is a God. People find it easier to believe there's a God or believe in God. They find that way easier than actually trusting in God, because there's a significant difference. Even the enemy, even he believes in God, but he doesn't trust in God. And God is inviting us into this relationship where we can trust in Him. And I'm going to read you a piece in Scripture, and it comes from the book of James. And this is such a hard-hitting Scripture, and it says in the book of James, in verse 2, James 1 verse 2 says, "My fellow believers, when it seems though you are facing nothing but difficulties, see it as an invaluable opportunity to experience the greatest joy that you can. For you know that when your faith is tested, it stirs up power within you to endure all things." Wow. That is a radical piece of Scripture. It goes on to say in verse 4, "And then as your endurance grows even stronger, it will release perfection into every part of your being until there is nothing missing and nothing lacking." My trust in God will lead me to prosperity. My trust in God will lead me into the promised land. My trust in God will take me into what God has destined for me. He came to give life and life abundantly. When I have belief in God, I get life. But when I have trust in God, I step into abundant life. When I can trust Him, He takes me from just understanding I have life to taking me into a place of having abundant life. That is so exciting. That just stirs me up. This word to speak in you. And people have questions. Where are you, God? When are you coming through, God? But it manifests out of trust. It manifests that I know Him. And I love the scripture. It says in Psalm 9 verse 10, those who know your name trust in you. Those who know your name trust in you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. You have never forsaken those who seek you. Those who know your name trust in you. The difference between believing and trusting is knowing who God is knowing who He is knowing His name. Knowing the name of God is knowing God Himself. Because even in the name of God, you know that He's your healer. He's the great physician. He's your provider. You know in Him you have nothing missing, nothing lacking. In Him you have abundance. So when you know Him, you trust Him because you understand that He has the best in mind for you. Stop just believing in God. Trust in Him. Stop just believing in God, hoping something happens, but begin to trust God, knowing that when you go read the Israelites coming out of Egypt into the promised land, God used the pillar of fire by night and the cloud of His presence by day to lead them from the front. And He used the chariots of Pharaoh from behind them to drive them, which means circumstances and situations will drive you from the back, and in front your trust in God will lead you into the promise. You will face valleys, but you have to know who's with you and trust in Him, knowing that the plans God has for you is to prosper you, is to advance you, is to empower you and better you. Keep trusting Him.